Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. I'm Micaela Musacchio Strigone, PhD candidate at the University of Trento, and I'm very excited to present to this online conference. Today, I'm going to present the preliminary findings of my dissertation that investigates the relations between far-right parties and movements in three Western European countries, Italy, United Kingdom, and France. Today, however, I'm presenting the preliminary findings of the Italian case studies. Very briefly, I'll go through the rationale and the theoretical framework that guides the research. So the puzzle is that while we all witness the electoral success that populist radical right parties achieved in the last 3 decades, and which has been extensively investigated, the recent increase in the activities of the extreme right-wing movements is still less examined, and moreover, and more specifically, how these two phenomena are or may be linked is even less understood. So this research aims at filling this gap by explaining how these two important political phenomena are linked. So the aim is to investigate the links between movements and parties, and research questions is under which conditions are far-right parties and movement more likely to have closer interactions, and how do parties' movement, mobilization strategies, discourses, and organizational characteristics change depending on the strength of their interactions. By bridging the scholarship on social movements and political parties, this research rests on the main theoretical assumptions that the interactions are determined by both external political and discursive opportunities and internal strategic choices of movements, organization, and parties. So in order to investigate the relations between far-right parties and movements, I have conceptualized these relations in terms of distance, proximity in 3 dimensions: frame, actions, and organization. These constitute the main dimension of the studies of social movements. However, I'll discuss only the first 2 dimensions today, as on the organizational one, I'm still gathering data. The main working hypothesis that guide the empirical research, based on a review of the literature on both far-right parties and movements, maintains that far-right parties and movements are more likely to be closer in the frame dimensions when topics that they own, such as immigration and law and order, become more visible, and when the party is in opposition. While on the action dimension, far-right parties and movements are more likely to be closer when parties are in opposition and when movements moderate their repertoire of actions. This research consists of an in-depth comparative analysis of 3 case studies, which are analyzed over a period of 11 years from 2009 to 2018. The 3 case studies are France, Italy, and the United Kingdom. But as I said, today I'll be presenting on the Italian one. Turning to the methods, I adopt 3 different methods to investigate each dimension of the relation. So with extensive political claim analysis, I gather the data on the frames and actions. Moreover, through a more qualitative frame analysis based on party and movement documents, I complement the frame analysis. And through documents analysis, I gather data on the organizational dimensions. I'll now turn to presenting the preliminary findings of the Italian case, and I begin with the results of the political claim analysis for the frame dimension. So there are 1,897 claims for the Italian case studies, 1,552 for Lega, and 344 for CasaPound. From an aggregate level, the most important findings from these 2 tables is that neither of them, of these actors, are single issues actors. While this is not surprising for Lega, is more important for CasaPound, which does not deal only with migration, but all issues are high on their agenda, except for Europe. With regard to the proximity in the frame dimension, we can observe from this graph, which shows how the issues are divided over the years, that there are some changes going on starting from 2013. This one is the graph from Lega, and this year represents a turning point for this party, with the election of Salvini as the new party leader, and with a shift from a regional identity to a national one. Moreover, 2013 is the start of the migration crisis, and with a shift toward a focus on these issues. Also, regarding CasaPound, 2013 and 2014 represents the years in which this movement is increasingly concerned with this issue. However, although the focus in 2014 is increasingly for both actors on migration, from the frame analysis, it emerged that Lega and CasaPound tend to frame the migration issue in slightly different terms. So Lega uses more the cultural argument against migration, highlighting the threat posed to the European way of life by specifically Muslim migrants, and linking migration with increased criminality. CasaPound instead tend to focus more on the economic arguments, claiming that public money should be used only for Italians only. Obviously, these two arguments are complementary and not mutually exclusively. However, it's interesting. It's an interesting findings, as I would assumed the opposite from the beginning. Another similarity in the frames of the two organizations is their framing of law and order issues, which they link strongly with migration. In fact, both depicts immigrants as a security threat to the Italian community. And during the years of the migration crisis, the focus dedicated to these issues increases. In contrast, traditional security issues that affect Italy, such as organized crime and corruption, are largely ignored by both actors. The major differences in terms of framing between the two actors is to be found in the discussion of the cultural issues. CasaPound is mainly concerned with traditional values and the protection of an idealized greatness of the country, while Lega is mainly concerned with the protection of traditional Christian values and vehemently against the recognition of any new rights to Muslims, ethnic minorities, and same-sex couples. Despite the difference on the cultural issues, these claims on these issues are high throughout the period, even 2013-2014, when there is a formal electoral alliance in place between these two actors. While the socioeconomic issues is completely dropped by CasaPound in this year. In fact, in 2014, for example, there is no claim on this, and really few in 2015. The focus on cultural remains pretty high on both. In order to investigate and compare the position of the two actors, I have also computed their mean position using a measure ranging from -1 to +1. In really broad terms, +1 indicates traditional conservative values, while -1 indicates more progressive multicultural values. For example, on the socioeconomic issues, I've recorded with +1 position associated to liberal economic values, and -1 more interventist one. From this graph, it can be observed how the average position of both actors across all issues is in the upper part of the graph, indicating how both actors adopt a clear right-wing position across all issues. The only exception, however, is the socioeconomic issues for CasaPound, which, differently from Lega, campaigns for social housing, welfare, benefits for young couples, and more accessible loans. Of course, these measures have to be reserved only for Italians, and this is the reason why it never the line doesn't ever cross -1. It's not even close to -1, but it's on -0.5. we can see that there are changes going on from 2013, 2014, again, also from these graphs, when the average position on migration issues for Lega increases toward 1. And this, as I said, this year is roughly the start of the migration crisis, but also of the joint campaign between the two actors. Also on the cultural issues, CasaPound, there is a small increase in these years for Lega, while on the cultural issues, CasaPound is pretty much stable at around 1. In sum, discussing some of the main conclusions on the frame dimension, the working hypothesis of the study has been confirmed, there is a convergence towards similar issues and more similarities in the frames adopted by these two actors starting from 2014. This is observable when the party, because in 2013, 2014 represent the years in which Lega is at its lowest electorally, and when CasaPound actually moderates some of its discourses. We saw how they dropped the socioeconomic issues being the most contentious. However, differences persist in the framing of migration, and most importantly on the cultural issues. Turning to the analysis of the action dimension, these tables show the aggregate data, and I've recorded the form of actions of the claims in a scale of contentiousness, so from conventional actions to violent one. While from this table, we can see that obviously CasaPound, the large majority, the 85% of all the claims made by CasaPound are of a conventional nature. The situation is different for CasaPound, but this is in line with the nature of the movement organization. In fact, they use both. They use all a variety of different repertoire of actions when protesting. By looking at the division of forms of action across years for Lega, we can see that the conventional type of action and types of claims are used almost the exclusively type of claim used when they are in government. So 2009, 2010, and then 2018 and 2019. However, when we take out the conventional form types and have a more close look to the different repertoire of action that also the party uses, we can see that they use the demonstrative form of action when they are in opposition, and this is in line with previous work that found that the right alternative returns to electoral and protest arena, but not at both at the same time. And from 2013, there is in 2014, 2015, there is an increase in the use of demonstrative type of claims. This corresponds to the highest peak of the migration crisis, but also when CasaPound and Lega mobilized jointly. In fact, in these years, the 16% of all protests organized by Lega are joined by CasaPound. They mobilize in the streets together. Regarding CasaPound, we can see that the conventional type of claim and the demonstrative type of claims are used increasingly more from 2013. This corresponds to when CasaPound enters the electoral arena and when they are allied with Lega. The most important finding on this graph is their use of violence. In fact, we can see that in 2014, they drop almost completely the use of violence in the year in which they are allied with the party. In 2015 and 2016 also are the years in which is the lowest level of violence has been recorded in the claims of the movement organization. This overall confirms the initial working hypothesis that maintained that the party and the movement would mobilize together and would be closer in this dimension when the party is at its lowest electorally and in opposition, and when the movement would moderate its repertoire of action. In conclusion, and summing up the main takeaways of this presentation, by analyzing the interaction between Lega and CasaPound, it emerged that they were closer when the party was at its lowest electoral and in search of a new strategy to renovate its agenda. The movements, at the same time they were closer, were also the movement moderated both frame and, most importantly, action. And they took the streets together. Through this proximity, the movement gained visibility and legitimacy. And these are the years, roughly the 2014-2016 years. However, even when the formal alliance between the two actors' hands, links, however weak, between the two organizations persisted. Even when Lega was at its highest in electoral terms following the 2019 EU elections, and in organized demonstration against the newly established center-left government, CasaPound promptly took part to the demonstrations organized by the party and was welcomed in. Moreover, throughout the period of analysis, Lega leaders continued to participate to cultural events organized by CasaPound. The party leader published a book interview with the publisher owned by CasaPound. And more in general, this research shows confirms how blurry the boundaries between institutional and non-institutional politics are, and how important is to study these forms of political participation in conjunction. Through these interactions, in fact, both parties and movements shape and innovate their repertoire of actions, but also their frames, and spoiler alert, also their organization. Obviously, these interactions also offer one way through which extreme ideas and actions gain visibility and legitimacy into mainstream politics, and therefore could represent a threat to liberal democracy. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your comments.